Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us tonight for we're back with the very popular Annie Kaszina to talk about healing from narcissistic abuse. I will pass over to Annie just so she can introduce herself to you all for those who didn't make the first part, and then we'll get cracking on the questions. Okay, over to you, Annie.
Hi, so my name is Annie Kaszina and I am a narcissistic abuse recovery coach. I've been doing that work for the last 20 years, working largely with women, but also with some men. And my passion for helping people heal from narcissistic abuse came about because after quite a long marriage in which I was deeply unhappy, I discovered that I'd been married to a narcissist, and therefore nothing that I could ever do to improve the marriage was ever going to work. And I thought, well, that wasn't a lot of fun, but let's see if I can help other people not to suffer in that way. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay, great, thank you. And we've had a few questions on the app and a few questions on Instagram as well that we didn't get to last time. So yeah, let's just get into it. So the first one I've got here is, how can you stop or reduce ruminating thoughts after a long history of emotional trauma?
Right, this is a really big question, and I think what happens is that basically you're left with a very low sense of self-worth. So some of the ruminating questions that you have are, how could they treat me this way? How could this happen to me? How can I ever get over this? You know, I'm worthless, and all kinds of things like that. So there's lots and lots of stages in the healing from ruminating thoughts. You do need to get education about why people behave like that and treat you that way. You've also got to look at your own past and whether this is an echo of treatment that you had before. And you've got to do your own healing work. You have to do work to rebuild your own self-esteem. And that is quite an art form. The other piece, which is really quite helpful, is that minds that don't have a great deal of other stuff going on will default to something negative. So one thing that's really helpful is keeping your mind engaged with something. I often recommend to clients that when they're out, say, walking, it's as good to listen to an audiobook. It's actually better to listen to an audiobook than just stay with your thoughts, because your thoughts might just go back to, oh, this is terrible, how am I going to live the rest of my life? I feel so worthless. If you're listening to an audiobook or a podcast or something that interests you, your mind will engage, you can learn something, and that's one way to close down the negative thoughts for a while. If you can do that, well, if you're watching a film, chances are you can shut down negative thoughts. So you can actually consciously do that at times to take yourself out of that cycle. That's not denial, that's just being effective. But the bottom line is you do need to do healing work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. The next question, how do you learn to trust people after going from relationship to relationship with a narcissist? How can I trust another man's words and his reactions after being physically and emotionally abused?
Well, this is a very interesting question. This is where we all start. We come out of this hell and we think, how do I trust someone else? And that actually is kind of saying, right, I want to actually skip 9/10 of the wheel of healing and just dive into the next relationship. Please, can you just tell me how I can dive into the next relationship safely? And the short answer is that you really can't. So you can't just trust someone because you don't know who that someone is. And past performance suggests that you have not been that great at finding out who they are. That's not a judgment. It's not intended as a judgment. It's just a fact. The more we know about our own foibles, the better we can deal with them. However, there's something very, very wrong when you are abdicating responsibility for yourself by saying, how can I trust somebody else? Because the first person that you need to learn how to trust is yourself. When you can trust yourself, you can start to make good judgments. So with most of these questions, they tend to come back to self.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you cope then when a narcissist X manipulates and starts manipulating the children? What coping techniques would you recommend there?
Again, this is a very big question. I'm not sure that I quite understand it. What I'm taking from this is that the children, that there has been some kind of separation, and that there has been some kind of arrangement made whereby the narcissist has access to the children.
Yeah.
And we don't know how old the children are, because that makes a difference. So this is a question I get asked a lot. And the thing is, there are different aspects of coping. There's the aspect of coping with what the children come back and tell you about the narcissist's wonderful new life without you in it, which is galling. And therefore, you ideally want to tell the children, basically, I don't want to hear what daddy's up to now about his magnificent holidays and wonderful partner or any of that stuff, or because that's just painful. You want to be sure, as sure as you can be, that your children are actually safe. And beyond that, there is very limited room for maneuver in what you can do. The thing you have to do is not react emotionally. A narcissist loves it if you go, how can you treat the children like that? How can you do that to them? Because then that person has realized, right, got it. That worries the hell out of her. I'll do that one again. It works. They're looking to feed off your distress. So you have to keep it very calm and low key. And if there's something that they really do that you don't like, you have to find a way of phrasing it to them to say, you know, when that happens, it doesn't work for you. It's you don't care about what works for them. But if you can find a way of saying, you know, that actually made you look a little bit bad in somebody's eyes, that might work, provided you keep your cool. But you've always got to think about their best interest and never, ever assume that you can appeal to their better nature because they don't have one. Oh, and the other thing is that you can expect that they might be almost reasonable for a few weeks or a few months, and you think, yeah, I'm really making headway. Yeah, we're getting a relationship going. You aren't. You're just having a peaceful patch, and it will turn bad again. So don't ever assume that there's something effective that you can do to change them. All you can ever do is try and manage things as effectively as possible for your children. And the ultimate piece is always remember that if your child has one loving parent, they will be fine. And that loving parent will be you.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a couple here before we go into the Instagram questions that came on the app this evening. So you might not have seen them because they've come on quite recently. But the first one, we've got a Frollo who is in the early stages of leaving a narcissistic husband and basically is looking for some advice as to how to navigate their way through the crisis. They have 2 children. They've said that everything is in his name. They know he will play dirty. She's a full-time parent and she needs to set herself up, support her family financially. She also says she's isolated from family and has no friends. So yeah, I just think some advice as to how to start to navigate that.
Right. This one is a bit of a counterintuitive one because you've got so much that you need to sort out that you're going sort of, right, I've got to sort my life out, got to make sure my children are happy, got to sort out my finances, got to sort out the divorce, and sometime or other when I've got time, I'll actually focus on my own healing. And that's the way people do it, and that is really making things even harder than they need to be. Ideally, you have to start working on your own healing because you are carrying the family. The better your mental and emotional state, the better the decisions that you can make. So you really have to bring things back to you. And I know it's terrifying. I worked with a client a few years back, and she was in very much that kind of situation. She had an alcoholic mother she was estranged from, so she was estranged from family. She'd been a member of the church, but the church supported her husband, so she was isolated there. Very difficult situation. She'd married at 18 and become a full-time mom, so she had nothing. Didn't know how the finances would work out. There didn't seem to be a lot of them. And she actually, she's sort of thinking, should I be a carpenter? Should I do this? Should I do that? And she was sort of constantly cycling through different doubts until we got her to start focusing on her own healing. And she worked on herself first, started to change her life, did very well with her children, found herself, went to university, got herself a good job, and absolutely a few years down the line, she was doing really well. She had her own business, she had a loving partner, she had a decent enough relationship with her ex, her children were thriving, it all worked really well. But ideally you want to start with yourself. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is that the narcissist will play very dirty. You've got to be prepared for that. You've got to be prepared to fight your corner. You've got to get really good support. You need legal support. Mediation is not going to work very well because the narcissist will just drive you and the mediator crazy. And the other piece, which is quite helpful if you're really stuck as you are in isolation, is to find some kind of women's support group specifically for survivors of domestic violence, which this counts as, because there you'll get a sense of community and solidarity, which will be very helpful to you.
Okay, thank you. The next one, it's when you're with a narcissist for a long time, is it normal to make you believe you might be a narcissist too?
Yes, when you're with a narcissist for a long time, nothing feels normal because nothing is normal. And narcissists love to set you up as the bad one. So they will be grossly selfish. And then eventually you'll say, actually, I actually want 10 minutes off for myself on the 25th of this month because it'll be the first time in 15 years. And they go, what? You're so selfish, you're a narcissist. And they've done such a job of brainwashing you into thinking that everything you do is wrong that you think, well, maybe I am the narcissist. Maybe I am selfish. Maybe I am asking too much. Maybe I do overreact. Maybe it is all my fault. Narcissists always leave you wondering whether you are the narcissist. But the interesting thing is that the only person who doesn't worry about whether they are a narcissist is the narcissist. So the fact that you're worrying that you might be the narcissist is a very reassuring sign that you're not.
Yeah, that's so true. The next one, sort of moving on to co-parenting. I have to co-parent with my ex who is a narcissist. How do I deal with the crippling anxiety I get after speaking to him?
Well, I think, again, this is one of these questions that begs the answer. You have to do your own healing work. This man is getting to you because every time you speak to him, you are getting a sense of how worthless, unimportant, and invisible and unlovable you are in his eyes. And that still resonates with your own beliefs about yourself. So on the one hand, you have to do your own healing. You have to actually invest in believing in yourself. You have to work at it. On the other hand, there's this big question about why are you even speaking to him? How often do you need to speak to him? What do you need to speak to him about? How much of your conversation is totally unnecessary? How much of your communication can take place via text or preferably via email? You want to limit your communications with him as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Next one, how do I cope going through the divorce process with a narcissist? My husband has continually lied, held up the process by ignoring requests and not providing the right documents, and won't let me move on with my life.
Yeah. This is a typical part of the narcissist's game playing. Basically, they didn't love you, but they do love every penny that they've ever come by, and they do not want to share whatever assets they have with you. So they are very, very interested in making it as hard as possible for you to see anything from them. They work on the principle that because they consider you a sad, pathetic, weak little person, if they make it hard enough, you will just give up. And you cannot afford to do that because you are entitled to 50% of whatever assets there are, and you really need that. So you have to be strong about it, which I know is a big ask. Believe me, I did that myself, and it was a hideous time of my life. You want to get the best support you can, the best legal support you can, and that doesn't necessarily even mean the most expensive. It means someone who actually understands what's going on, who will fight your corner instead of talking about fighting your corner, who will not waste time in unnecessary communications and will not play nicely with the narcissist, someone who is very firm and very clear about how this thing is going to go. At the same time, you have to accept that it is going to be as ugly and as painful as they can make it for you. They will drag it out, and they will probably cheat you out of some of what's yours. It's one of the costs. I regard it as a sort of the narcissist tax, the price you end up paying for getting your freedom back. That doesn't mean you should roll over and give up. It means that you understand that you will win a certain amount and lose a certain amount. And again, you have to take care of yourself and work on your own healing through it. It will be damaging. He will try to inflict as much harm as he can, but you have to listen to the narrative in your own head and sort of get over this, oh, he's doing this because he hates me and I must be worthless and all of this. You just got to get that out of your head and think, what a cheap person this is. And, you know, I am better than this. I don't want to have anything to do with this. And hold on to the fact that you are better than this and you will have a good life afterwards.
So is this something you come across quite a lot then in your work with women going through, or men, either party going through the divorce process with a narcissist, in terms of the lying, ignoring the requests? Is that a very common occurrence?
All the time. It's absolutely standard. At the moment, there is a friend of mine in another country who was married to a guy for a lot of years until she actually said no to him about something. He was such a pain. And then he has been lying about his income. He has been lying about the fact that she worked in his business for years and he only had a business because she worked in it. He's been lying about her and saying that she was mentally unstable and had affair after affair. And that's just absolutely typically the way they do it. They lie about everything because they love their blessed money.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just curious because this is that's not my question, but it's pretty much you know, I'm a frollo myself, and that's what I'm going through. And you think, oh, is it just that person?
No.
But coming to realize then that that is a classic trait of narcissist is quite fascinating.
Yes, they absolutely do everything to grind you down. The only lasting love affair they have is what they feel is theirs. And if you bring any assets to the marriage, they will try to take possession of those. When I was leaving my ex-husband, he actually got his solicitor to write to my solicitor. No, actually, he wrote to me himself. Sorry, I forget. But he actually wrote to me saying, I will have half of everything, because he'd moved out. He said, I actually want half of the tea towels. I was quite fond of my tea towels, so that was a low blow. But I mean, that was how low this man would stoop, and he was a respected professional. Mm-hmm. And he didn't need half my tea towels.
God. I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people in this session just now. Next question. I only realised I had been in a relationship with a narcissist after a lot of healing. I'm still on the receiving end of a lot of emotional and financial abuse. My ex has said she doesn't want to be involved with our son. Do I keep the door open for them if they change their mind about having a relationship with our son? And if I do, how can I protect myself from the gaslighting and abuse I receive when they are in contact?
It would be helpful to know the age of the child involved.
Yeah, it didn't say.
Yeah, because that would sort of give some kind of guide as to how much of a relationship they had with the narcissist in the first place. It's always very important to know from the child how they feel about the narcissist. So some of them don't want anything to do with the narcissist anyway, in which case that's a godsend. If the narcissist doesn't want to have anything to do with them, I would be tempted to say, take that as a blessing and run with it. I think there's a lot of guilt that's underpinning this, sort of, well, I couldn't give my child a good second parent, but at least I can do what I can by letting them have access to that parent. But if they're going to have access to a parent who will never be a loving parent, who will let them down and make them feel unloved, how is that a win? You might, if this person wants to leave their child's life, that sounds to me like the best of, the correct phrase is the least worst option.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. The next question, at what point does the behaviour of your child's other parent go from narcissism to coercive control?
This is a very interesting one, and I'm wondering why that is important. And my guess was that if you say it's narcissism, the police would go. And if you say it's coercive control, you might just be able to bring some kind of legal action about that.
Okay.
So that's the kind of only logical difference that I can understand. In definition of coercive control would include the parent derides, demeans, diminishes the children by putting them down, putting them in their place, mocking them, exerting power over them, and being punitive or psychologically controlling. And that would be not hugely different to what narcissists might do. But you do have to prove it. You'd have to prove it via any kind of written medium or social media. And I think it could be a really tough one to prove.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy with adults, but with a child, a parent could say, oh no, he just misunderstood it. You know, I was just joking. The kid's a bit sensitive. I don't think that would be an easy sell at all,
Okay.
even if it's true.
Okay. And then the next question, how do I build a new mindset where I'm not on the back foot or in the wrong?
You build a new mindset by doing the healing work so that you stop feeling that you're in the wrong, and therefore you stop being put on the back foot by whoever it is who has been putting you on the back foot. Yes, it's this old Einstein thing. You can't keep on doing what you've always done and hoping for a different result. So if you're carrying the mindset of being not very good at stuff, not very worthwhile, then when you meet any kind of bully, you're going to be incredibly uncomfortable. So you really do have to look at the beliefs that you have about yourself and start to unpick them. And my belief is that all of those negative beliefs are learned beliefs. Underneath that, you once knew that you're a good person, that you're a good enough person, and that is still there. But you do have to get rid of those negative beliefs to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. It's all in the healing work, isn't it? Yeah.
It really is.
So the next one, how do I stop feeling sympathy and empathy for a narcissistic and abusive ex?
I have come across this many, many times as well. And I don't think that that means quite what it says. When people say that, they are quite possibly still emotionally attached to this person. And they are also quite possibly emotionally attached to the fact that if they want to be a nice person, which they surely do, they have to only feel sweetness and light towards their ex. And also, if you can feel sorry for them, it kind of gives you the moral high ground. But actually, you shouldn't, I hate the word shouldn't, but it's very strange to get to the moral high ground when someone has completely trashed your emotions and trashed your life. There is a, dare I say that word again, healing process that needs to take place. It is kind of normal to feel extremely angry that someone has treated you the way they have treated you, that you are in this very battered emotional state because of what you've been through. And turning your attention to the poor abuser is a little bit like denial of your own emotional state and your own damage that you've sustained. And if you can't actually focus on your own stuff, you can't heal, but you'll just be locked into some kind of dynamic with this person. And the fact is that they are doing very nicely, thank you. They're doing about as nicely as they want to do. Narcissists bounce back. Narcissists are amazing. I mean, they will do this wonderful act for public consumption about how broken-hearted they are and how hard it's been for them. Just to give you a little example, after my husband left, he, in his professional life, used to see the people he regularly saw, and he'd see them and he'd look at the photo that he had of his daughter on his desk with a tear in his eye and tell them how broken-hearted he was that he wasn't seeing her anymore. I know this because some of them referred it back to me. However, when I wanted to change her school, because she was being badly bullied at school, and the only option actually was a private school that he could well afford, And I asked him whether he'd put her into the private school because he had the money, I didn't. He said no. And when she wrote him and explained how desperately miserable she was and would he do that for her, he wrote back to her and said, I don't think you're bright enough. A private education would be wasted on you and I won't. And that is the narcissist, the gulf between the public and the private face. And he was doing just fine, thank you. He'd found his next wife by then. And he did fine. Narcissists do fine.
That's awful.
Mm.
With the next question, I think we've kind of touched on elements of it, but somebody has also asked, how do you get over a narcissist? Like, how do you even start that process?
Right. Sorry. Sorry.
Sorry.
Should put my face mask on. How do we even get over the narcissist? Right, I think the thing is that we're all terribly gung-ho when we come out of the relationship. We want to get over it. And the thing is, the first thing we have to do is grieve. And that's incredibly annoying because the last thing you want to be doing is sort of flopping around the place like a heartbroken, unset jelly when you've got a life to rebuild. But you have to actually grieve for what you've lost. Sorry. This is getting worse. So there are various parts of the grieving process. You have to grieve, you have to feel the anger, you have to sit with yourself, you have to accept yourself, accept the pain, and then you gradually have to start to rebuild. And yes, that does involve doing work. It involves getting some kind of professional support, if it is a group or if it is a one-on-one, but it needs to be specialist work. And you need to give yourself far more time than you want to give yourself. I mean, all right, you've wasted years in a rotten relationship. The last thing you want to do is waste more years going through this grieving and healing process, but that's what you have to do.
Yeah, it's so important.
Yeah.
And then moving on to the next one, how do I go up against a narcissist in court?
Well, to put this, to be as accurate as possible, you do not go up against the narcissist in court. If you are in court, that is what your legal representation is for. They go up against the narcissist. You should not be having direct contact with that person. But you do not want to, because they will probably intimidate the hell out of you. So you have to have legal representation that really understands and really will fight your corner. Yeah, there is, it's not like the dramas we see. If you have to go to court, good luck with that one. I did. And a lot of it depends on the judge that's there that day. It's tough. That's all I can say. There is no magic bullet. I wish there was.
Yeah, and it's so true. It depends on the judge, because you could have 6 different judges who will all give you 6 different opinions and 6 different rulings.
Absolutely. On my decree nihil, the judge was drunk. It was a male judge, and he couldn't even remember our names. He couldn't work out who was who or what was what. Fortunately, it was a woman in the final hearing, and she was much more sympathetic. She didn't like my husband.
Oh, wow.
I like that.
The next one is, how do I handle my ex-husband asking to get back together when he went off with someone else?
Well, I'm a bit baffled by the question. The first answer that comes to mind is that you have to think what you really want. And because he's come back and said, oh, sorry, darling, I made a terrible mistake, or maybe she didn't want me in the first place, that doesn't give him a right to come back. So you have to decide whether you want him back and on what terms. So it's not enough to say, oh gosh, he's realized the error of his ways and let's go back together and we can put this behind us. Da, 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 da. I wouldn't do that. If you do decide that you might be able to make a life together again, you both have to work at your own stuff. And we don't know in what circumstances this man went off. It doesn't say whether his...
No detail.
Or not.
No.
So if we assume it's a normal thing, sorry about my nose, if we assume that it was a relatively healthy relationship, then adultery and betrayal like that is a sign that something is not working in the marriage. So there would be a lot to work on. If it's a narcissist, again, there's even more to work on, and frankly, the chances of it working are, about as good as COVID disappearing from the face of the planet tomorrow. But if you are going to give that person another chance, you've got to be very, very clear, both of you, about what is going to be different this time and how you know it's going to be different this time, how you are both going to do things differently together and separately. And also, if they really want to come back, then they can actually do a bit of their own growing up on their own as you do your own growth on your own, and then come back together. But do not rush into it. You have no guarantees it will work.
Absolutely.
You need to find out.
Okay. And then the next one I've got here, I have a young daughter who misses my narcissistic ex very much. How can I help her cope? It doesn't say the age, but I assume the ex is not in the daughter's life anymore, because it seems that she's not seeing the ex.
Yes. So again, I think this is one of those questions. I would love to give my child the best experience, and it's breaking my heart that I can't, and she wants to see their narcissist, and maybe they can be a better parent to her than they've ever shown any sign of being. And so I think there's a lot of concern about not doing a good enough job as a parent. And the fact that this other parent has gone off and isn't bothered tells you about their parenting. So I think the best thing is simply to support that child and acknowledge that it is hard for the child. It's not your job to make everything right for the child, or to try to make everything right for the child at huge cost to yourself. It is your job to do the best you can to give that child the love and support that they need to grow. But you can't do two people's work for the child, and you can't give them the parent that they don't have.
Yeah. And then I've got a question in the chat that's come through as we've been talking. When we talk about controlling finances and narcissism, can that be applied to controlling contact with children similarly? So I think it was when we were talking about divorce and controlling and hiding finances. I guess they're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but whether that kind of behaviour is applied to controlling contact with children in the same way.
Absolutely, they can be vile about contact with children. They will use it as a weapon to drive you crazy. They will make things as difficult as they can for you. They will pick children up at the wrong time, drop them off at the wrong time, not see them when they should see them. when they have them, they can do stupid things with them, not take care of them properly, not bother to feed them. They will do anything they can do when it suits them to just drive you crazy. It's, yeah.
Okay, so I think we've got through all of the questions we had from the last session and the new ones as well. So yeah, let's open it up for a Q&A. We've got a little bit of time left. If anyone does have any questions they want to ask now that we haven't covered tonight, you can either put it in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask the question.
Can I ask? I actually put a question in there.
Oh, sorry.
Narcissist. Yeah, there was a question in the box that I put. Someone, I think you asked me about it, but narcissists use the 3 S's. I only know 2 of them. I don't know what the third one is. I know one's supposed to be supply, one's sex, and I don't know what the third one is. And I was wondering if she knew.
I haven't heard that one. So I don't know what the third one is offhand. I can't work it out.
Because obviously, narcissists apparently use, basically you're kind of like a supply to them for their needs.
Yeah.
And then once you no longer feed that supply, you're no longer needed.
Yeah. And how a narcissist judges supply varies from narcissist to narcissist. Some narcissists get bored after the sex has been around for a while. Some resent you and decide they're done when you actually stand up for yourself. And some just go on for a long, long time. So
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question okay? Sorry.
Yeah, I just wonder what the third one is, but it's okay.
I've got another one in the chat here. Can relationships work between 2 victims of a narcissist?
Ouch. First of all, you don't ever want to go into a relationship as a victim of anyone, and 2 victims together, that sounds really worrying. It sounds like 2 wounded people who have not actually worked through their own stuff and done their own healing. Sorry to say that word again, but yeah. So no, 2 victims will not heal each other, will not heal themselves. That's my belief. You actually want to be 2 people with wounds that you have worked on when you come together. You have been victimized, but you don't want to take that victim status into the next relationship.
Okay. And actually, sorry, I do have another one here in the app. So somebody has posted that they've just split with their ex-partner on the 1st of Jan. So this is her 3rd day. She's been in refuges exactly a year ago. Then she went back to him. He started on meds, he changed, but then he stopped taking his tablets and is awful again. So she needs some help to get things right this time for the kids. So I think she's just, she's saying she's broken. She's just looking for some advice, having just come out of this, 3 days ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she's devastated. Everybody uses the term broken, and I wouldn't use it because that suggests that the pieces of you have fallen apart and won't go back together. They will. You are simply devastated. So it's kind of interesting because of all the things that aren't said. I'm wondering whether she's feeling guilty about getting involved again, heartbroken because he could have been what he has chosen not to be. And the fact is that she is in a very low place right now. That is how it is. And just be patient. Obviously, having had this second misfortune and a man who is not willing to take his medications and do what's necessary to keep his family together in a healthy way, there is no point in ever going back. So I think you have to accept that something that you'd never have wished to happen has happened, and that does not prejudice your future. That does not make you in any way a bad person. It just makes you a very wounded person. Get the support that you can get, forgive yourself, and start really working to try and find things that bring you a little bit of joy in your day to help you move on from this place. And yeah, if there's a group that you can join with others, that will be very, very supportive for you.
Definitely. Another one on the chat. Any advice for a child age 6 whose father is manipulating her to believe her mum has done everything wrong when the father was being abusive and the child believes it's the mother's fault?
Yeah, this is not a typical narcissist game. So I don't understand from this whether there is joint custody or whether the father has custody and he's trying to poison the child's mind, or what's going on. It would kind of help to know a little bit.
I think the person who asked it is still on the call. If you're able to give a little bit more detail, if possible. No worries if not. Maybe she's dropped off. Yeah, there's no detail in terms of.
Hi.
Oh, there.
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. The child sees her father every 2 weeks, but he's not on the birth certificate, and there's been no court cases.
Right. And does he play super good dad when he's with her?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he just badmouths you?
Yeah. And is not nice with me, but super good dad with her.
Yes, in short doses, just to prove a point. Yeah, so the thing is that you're actually the main carer for your daughter.
Yes.
And that's really important. You're the person who's providing her with love and security every day.
Yeah.
So the first thing you need to do is, I would say, shut down this line of communication, because what he's actually doing is feeding you poison. That's what he wants to do. So you just have to tell your daughter that daddy likes to say things, daddy likes to sometimes paint me as the wicked witch or something, and I don't want to hear about it.
Okay.
So you just shut that down. There's the fact that your child is hearing it, which is terribly wrong. But if he's not getting the satisfaction of feeding it back to you, and if you treat your child like things are absolutely normal, that you have the good relationship that you doubtless do have with her, and he doesn't get the satisfaction, that should help. And I think there was an implied question about why you should even have him involved in her life.
I think that a lot, but she really wants that relationship. I do think perhaps it's from him being sort of the good dad when they have the contact, but then any sort of managing of when they see each other is really awful with me. Is she doesn't see that side, she only sees the good side.
How do you communicate about
via text?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So just, can you do it via email?
I think I should definitely ask.
Well, don't ask, tell him.
Okay.
You know, from now on, we'll be communicating via email. It sounds like you could be firmer, which would be helpful. And your daughter's world is probably a little bit shut down at the moment, as everybody's world is.
Yeah.
So the more interesting her own life becomes, hopefully the less time she'll have for sort of super smarmy dad.
Yeah.
And hopefully he'll get bored as well and chase somebody else instead.
Thank you for answering that.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, so next one, are there any good books to read about self-healing post-narcissistic relationship?
There are lots of different books around. Dare I do an unashamed plug of my own book?
Yeah.
I wrote a workbook some years back called The Woman You Want to Be, because when I left my emotionally abusive relationship, I was really at rock bottom. I had no self-worth. I was very broken. It took me ages to get myself together. And so in a sense, I was my own perfect client. I could read all these things about get out, do this, do that, do the other, and I couldn't do it. It just left me. I just left me cold. I thought, you know, this is starting from where I'm not. So my book, The Woman You Want to Be, starts from where I was. I was just about able to get up, get dressed, crawl through a day. Affirmations didn't work for me, but I produced something that was very, very simple. You just had to read something a few times a day for a year, different things. And in the course of that, change happened. So nobody was asking you to make bigger changes than you're capable of making. So that's a very low demand way of changing. It's just, you know, if you put one foot in front of the other and just do this, you will achieve the results you want. Instead of, right, let's go for some high-level healing, which I'm not ready to achieve now. Try it, fail, and go, oh, I can't do this stuff. So that would be the book that I would recommend. And there are a lot of good books for information, but healing, you have to find a resource that works for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've got a couple more in the chat. The next one, do I have a right to stop my son from seeing the father unsupervised when he's put my child at risk a few times, but always uses the excuse that he still sees his other daughter, so I must be the one in the wrong?
Well, I think it depends what the legal arrangements are. But if he is putting his son at risk, then that needs to be actually dealt with appropriately, which will mean going through legal channels. But I think you have to be careful of not just withholding a child, because that can get very ugly indeed. Mm-hmm. Legally, you could find yourself in the wrong there. So you have to work out how best to do it. You will need to take advice on that.
Yeah, and a lot of them solicitors offer like 30 minutes free, don't they? Yeah. So perhaps that could be the first port of call.
Yes, in which case really try and nail them down, because they manage to offer as little in the 30 minutes use as they possibly can. I didn't say that.
There's another question here. I'm a victim of the emotional and psychological abuse and currently going through the court proceedings, and he's going for shared custody. How can I protect myself and my daughter from his manipulative behaviour in the long term? She's only 2 now, and knowing him, he would use her to manipulate her, but also worry he may directly be more abusive to her.
You can only make the point and see if there are any past precedents that can be shown to be harmful. The other piece is that at this moment you're really frightened of him. That puts you in a weak position. You have to actually understand that you can keep yourself safe, even if he is a vile person and if he is very intimidating. You can become much stronger in dealing with him. And I always have this issue with narcissists as parents, because yeah, they love doing good dad, but basically a 2-year-old child is quite demanding, and narcissists aren't really very keen on dealing with difficult children. With difficult children's demand. A 2-year-old is not difficult, but for narcissists, they don't want to be doing that stuff. They either want to farm them out to somebody else and just do the photo opportunities, or they just want them as a pawn. So hopefully they will kind of lose a bit of interest, but you will have to fight them hard for what you feel is right for your child. Mm-hmm. So you have to make yourself strong.
Okay. The next one in the chat, my 9-year-old daughter's mum and stepmom have chosen not to be in her life. My daughter says it doesn't bother her, but I'm afraid it could affect her. Do you have any advice?
Well, I think you have to go with what your daughter says. And you've got to get over this anxiety. If it leaves her with an issue, that issue can be dealt with. I understand that as a parent, you want your child's world to be perfect. You want to spare them any pain that you possibly can. In the real world that you live in, that can't happen. So therefore, you try to give them the most secure and loving world that you possibly can, and make sure that they are as emotionally resilient as they possibly can be. And honestly, if people don't want to be in your child's life, they're probably not the kind of people you'd want there anyway. So it's not as if she's losing out.
Okay, thank you. I've got 2 more in the chat, if you're okay to cover those ones before we wrap up. I am just conscious of time. The next one is, can a narcissist be a horrible partner but a good father?
I have occasionally heard this from clients, oh, he's lovely with the kids. Well, that's interesting. How is he lovely with the kids? Well, he's like a great big kid with them. He loves to play games with them, right? And does he do the difficult parts of parenting and the boring parts of parenting and the demanding parts of parenting? No, but he's like a lovely big kid with them. Okay, how is that being a good father? That's like being the sort of bachelor uncle who comes in from time to time. It's very, very, very unlikely that a narcissist would be a good parent, because a good parent is about actually putting yourself aside so that you can do the best for your children. Narcissists don't do that.
Okay. And then the final question here, somebody has written in the chat that they're a victim of domestic violence and they're in a refuge now. They agreed that the husband could see their 11-month-old son, but after they agreed to that, he started posting awful things on social media. And she wants to know, can she stop him visiting their child? Or is it okay to tell the solicitor or social worker, I don't want him to see our son because I'm afraid of continuing this bad behaviour?
It sounds like it's a very good idea to do that. Toxic people always push the boundaries. So he's saying, I want what I want, and I also want you to basically have your nose rubbed in it by me. So yes, this is a very good place to actually draw a boundary that if he can't behave properly, then he can't have access to his son. See what the social worker and the lawyer solicitor say, but the fact that she's in a refuge does tend to suggest that this is unacceptable behaviour, and he needs to know it.
Absolutely. Well, that is all of the questions now. So thank you so much for taking the time to kind of go through all of the questions with us again tonight, and I hope everybody found it really valuable. I know I did, and yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to join us again, Annie.
Pleasure, lovely to be with the Frollo community. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.